Hi everyone and welcome back. In today's video, we are going to discuss about the AWS fault injection service. Now let us understand with a simple analogy use case. This will make things easier for us to understand and remember on a longer term. Now the analogy is related to a car safety. So let's say that you are a car manufacturer and you have built your car and you claim that this car is the safest on the road. Now the claim is fine. The most important part is how do you prove it? You cannot just drive on the highway and hope for the best. This does not really work. You have to prove the safety that it actually works as expected. So this is one of the reasons why nowadays global NCAP is very popular, specifically in India, where you take the car to a control facility and intentionally smash it into the wall and see what happens. And based on this specific crash rating, you get the appropriate score. It can be 1 star, 2 star, 4 star, the 5 star. 5 star is the highest. So based on the appropriate NCAP score, lot of users, they determine whether they want to buy a car or not. So generally what happens is that in India, there are two type of buyers. One buyer, they look for the sole mileage. For example, the taxi operators. For them, mileage is the most important part because that is the most critical factor that determines their revenue. And second type of buyers, they look more for the safety. For example, if you talk about me, when I go and look for car, the first filter is 5-star rated car. I do not really go for any car that are below 5-star crash rating. Why? Because the health is the most important part. However, the aim of the first two slides is that you need to perform the crash test to determine whether what manufacturer is claiming to be the safest on the road, it is actually provable. In a similar way, in IT also, when you say that I have a reliable system, I have a highly available system, I have a fault tolerant based application, how do you prove that? So in such cases, the concept of chaos engineering comes into picture. Now at an overview, chaos engineering is a discipline of intentionally injecting the control failures. For example, any random server shutdown, it can lead to resource spikes, etc. So it intentionally injects some control failures into the software system to test their resilience and overall build the confidence that the application that you have built, it can withstand the real world challenges. So if an attacker is attacking your website, they are running the denial of service, they are running brute force, or due to some reason there are hardware issues from the AWS side, one of the server went down. So is your application resilient enough to overcome all of this and still work perfectly for the users? In most of the organization, you can say yes. However, how do you test it? And one of the areas that allows you to test is using the chaos engineering discipline. Now, when we discuss about chaos engineering, one of the famous tool that is available in the market is the Chaos Monkey. So this was created by Netflix. So it is one of the famous open source tool and it is responsible for randomly terminating the instances in your production environment. Alright, and when you do that, it allows you to ensure that engineers implement their services to be more resilient to instance failures. And this is expected because many times what happens is the hardware issues from the cloud provider side arises and at the last moment you realize that your application is not resilient enough and there are hardware issues from AWS side. What will you do? Ultimately, the customer will be impacted. So it is very important that you test it beforehand and one of the tools is Chaos Monkey. Now the monkey that you see in the screenshot, this is also a Chaos Monkey for my house. It is not the Chaos Monkey tool. So this monkey likes to regularly visits my house and it creates quite a lot of chaos, but it is quite fun to see him visit every day. Now discussing about the chaos engineering, one of the tools that can help as part of this is the AWS fault injection service. At an overview, it is a managed service that enables us to perform the fault injection experiments on your AWS workloads. And as we are discussing, it is based on the principles of chaos engineering. So depending upon what you configure as part of the fault injection service, it can go ahead and stop your instances, it can stop your database and so on. And then you can monitor your production traffic to see if it is impacted. If your systems are resilient enough, it should not really impact, and this is one of the good ways to test it on a longer run. Now before we proceed further, let's have a demo. This will give us better clarity. Now for today's demo, I have a simple EC2 instance that is available over here. Generally in production, you'll have multiple instances for high availability. And currently within the fault injection service, currently I have one template that is available. Now let's go ahead and use this. Now again, template can do a lot of things. It can, for example, it can stop the instances for some amount of time and it can start back again. And as part of this, you will be able to observe the behavior of your website accordingly. So let's do one thing. Let's go ahead and start the experiment. We'll see on what exactly it does over here. So I'll click on start experiment over here. So it says I have successfully started the experiment. So what it is going to do, let's wait. You see, it is stopping the EC2 instance now. So it is not that it will just stop the EC2 instance and that's about it. It will automatically start the EC2 instance again after some amount of time, and this specific part can help you and your SRE team see how resilient your infrastructure is. Now, again, it is not necessary that the only thing that it does is stop the EC2 instance over here. In case if you like, you can also stop the experiments if you realize that some things are not really working as expected. Now, whenever you create the experiment template, in fact, let me quickly show you, there are a lot of actions that are available. You see, for example, when we go a bit down, for direct connect, it can disconnect the virtual interface. This is something that you should not really do unless and until you are very confident things are working. Then for EBS, it can pause the IO for set of EBS volumes. For EC2 instance, it can reboot the instance, it can stop the instance, it can terminate the instance. Specifically, let's say that you have auto scaling group, then maybe terminate instances is something that you can look for. Then there are certain actions related to auto scaling group. If you're using ECS, then there are certain actions that are available. For Kubernetes also, it can delete the pods, it can perform the stress test, the memory test and so on. So a lot of customization is available over here for wide variety of services. So let's go back to the experiments. Now you see the experiment has completed. So once the experiment is completed, it will automatically start the EC2 instance again. You see earlier it was stopped state. Now it is currently in the pending state. So it is starting it back again. So if I'll quickly refresh, you see the instance is back up again. Now before we conclude, few points to note. First one is that the fault injection service, it supports wide range of AWS services. For example, EC2 demo is something that we just saw. It supports ECS, EKS, RDS, Lambda, EBS volumes, S3, DynamoDB and various others. So this list will keep on increasing as the time progresses. Now before we conclude, few pointers that we have to keep a note. First one is that the AWS fault injection service is not free. So in case if you plan to use it in the organization, make sure that you look into the pricing aspect over here. So always verify the pricing of any AWS services before you experiment, specifically the services that has anything to do with AI and ML. Those services tends to be very expensive. Great. So I hope with this you understood the basics of chaos engineering and its importance and how the fault injection service can help in such use cases. Now I still remember many years back in the organization that I was working with, our SRE team suddenly they became very motivated and they sent email to all other teams that they are going to perform chaos engineering related experiments. So during that time the fault injection service was not really available and they wanted to do it using the Chaos Monkey. Chaos Monkey is again very famous. It was by Netflix. Currently it is open source. So what Chaos Monkey does, it is responsible for randomly terminating the instances in the production environments over here. And basically the aim is to ensure that the applications or whatever servers that you have, they are resilient against the instance failures. So in the organization that I used to work with, we had two different teams to create and manage the infrastructure. For example, the DevOps team, they manage the infrastructure related to the applications and so on. And security team, I was part of the security team. We were only two people, me and my manager. And we used to take care of creating and managing the infrastructure related to security. So we had around 30 to 40 EC2 instances related to various components like IDS, IPS. We had Splunk Enterprise Security, SIEM solution and so on over here. So the SRE team was very motivated and they wanted to run the Chaos Monkey across all of the infrastructure, including the infrastructure of the security team. Now, although we do our own set of testing to ensure that one server, two server, even if it fails, you have a necessary set of replication. But the issue with chaos engineering, one thing that I'd like to share is that if you're using some ready-made scripts of chaos engineering, and if that script is not working as expected, for example, let's say that in total you have 3 servers and the load is distributed among all of the 3 servers. Now let's say due to some reason, any chaos engineering script that you are creating and using, it can be Chaos Monkey, it can be any others. Due to some mistake on the configuration side, instead of deleting one server, it deletes all of the 3 servers. Now what are you going to do? In such cases, if you have 3 servers for high availability and all of the 3 server goes down, then essentially you will have to restore it from the backup. Maybe you might have backup in S3, maybe you might have some Ansible configuration that will bring back the base configuration and so on. So generally, as part of the chaos engineering, you have to be very careful. First, always run the experiments in dev environment, maybe then in staging, and last, do it in production. So during that time, a security manager said no to the SRE team, stating that you can run the chaos engineering experiments on your workload. Please do not touch our workloads because they are very sensitive, and we have 5-6 team as part of the security operations center who are regularly using Splunk to monitor any security attacks and so on. So the servers were very critical during that point of time. So that was approved. SRE team said that, okay, we are not going to touch your workloads. And after 2 months, I asked the SRE team members, hey, how did your chaos engineering experiment went? And they told that they did not run it at all, because they were also afraid that if things went wrong, then the application of the entire organization will go down and that will severely impact the traffic. So even they were a little afraid to run it directly in the production environments. And this is something that you will see in larger environments also, where the SRE team and the DevOps team, they are little bit critical to experiment with Chaos Monkey and so on. However, with fault injection service, maybe you can replicate it. For example, you can have a very controlled infrastructure based experiments that you can perform. So that is one thing to note. So that's the overview about the fault injection service. And with this, we'll conclude today's video.